thank you for that introduction, Jim. And it was just pointed out to me, actually, that we have got the after lunch shift. So hopefully nobody's going to be sat here snoozing. So I think I kind of wanted to kick things off with a question for both of you, really. And I've kind of asked this question a bit already this morning, which is, we're talking about Smart Campus today, but we were kind of talking about it in 2018. So, and it's great to see some use cases. You know, the guys at Imperial, I looked in on their session and they were doing some cool stuff. Why do you think it is that we've gone from 2018 to today, and we're really only starting to see those use cases emerging now?
Do you want to I'm going first. Yeah, so funny enough, it's a good time to use 2018 because I've been doing this since 2015. And what's quite amusing is the whole time I've been doing it, people are saying IoT is never going to happen. Location services are never going to happen. And I've been promoting it. And as you said, over the last, I think it's just hit a tipping point in the last 2 years, maybe 3 years, where I personally think it's because of two things. I think it's because of the demands of the newer generation, wanting things to move quicker, especially in a building. So after COVID, people like my 19-year-old son, he's at Kent University, wants things now, instantly, attention span of 30 seconds, etc. So we're seeing a massive demand for better location services in the infrastructure, for navigation and instant room check-in and all those things. But the biggest thing I'm seeing in Europe, so I cover all of EMEA, and probably coming to the UK in 26, is legislation. So we're now seeing, I'm working on a big project in France, where if they don't get these sensors in the building and understand energy by 2025, so they're running fast now to get it done, they get a huge fine. It's called the BACS regulation. And you've got the energy directive. And all of our universities are big buildings that are consuming a massive amount of water and energy, just like the Imperial presentation earlier. So I think that is what's, personally, I think legislation, regulation, and generations.
For me personally, I think it's from HE organisations. I think they're very much looking over each other and seeing who's doing what and how much are they doing and where do they want to go. I think if you talk to an HE organisation and say, let's go on a smart journey and make all everything smart, they're going to be like, whoa, how much is that going to cost? That sounds very expensive. I think a lot of HE institutes have already started that journey and they don't even know, because most of us would have occupancy sensing of some sort of play, even if it's just from looking at whether desks are occupied or not, or spaces. So some of the journey's already started, but I think what we need to understand is that there's some groundwork and fundamental foundations that need to be in place that you build upon, and that it doesn't mean that it's one size fits all and everybody should have it's a smart building, you have everything from that. It's what are you going to get most benefit from, and that will then help you have your user cases and keep your costs to where they need to be, and you get the best benefit out of it. But I think now a lot of organisations now, because of what's happening with budgets and having to look at sustainability and all these other agendas that are out there, are seeing that going on that smart journey is going to help them get there and realise that, and the benefits by bringing the benefits to the forefront of what you can get out of this then helps make the user cases and get those across the line.
You're bang on, yeah, because this has always been the challenge with smart buildings, is it's always been the coolest thing to do, but then when it goes up to finance and they say, okay, you're going to spend 80 grand or 800 grand putting in these sensors, what business outcome is it going to have? And over the last 5 years, we're saying, well, it's really cool, you can navigate to your room and you can do this. So it's exactly what we've been focusing on recently. We've actually hired a team of value advisors that are MBA people from the city to come in and help me actually go in and say, if we stop 30 toilets leaking across a campus building, that's going to save £70,000 worth of water. If we do this with a sensor that has what we were talking about, bi-directional control, so if the air quality is poor, open a window, and that increases student productivity by 8%, that has a business outcome. So what we're doing now is actually taking those, exactly what you said, and building it into a C-level, say, business report. But then that can flow back into IT and us, and say, yes, we could spend this because the end result will be that.
Yeah, and it's the benefits that you're going to get from it. Yeah, so I speak to one of the subject matter experts around space utilisation and our strategy for the estate going forward into the next 20, 30 years. And he wants to know what the occupancy of the estate is. And what he always says to me is, keep it simple. Yeah, I don't need to know who's sitting at each desk straight away. What I do need to know is how busy an area is, and then if we want to deep dive into that, then maybe go into what the seating, how many seats are being occupied. And they keep pushing us estates. Even at one of the directors estates, she keeps saying, well, we have Wi-Fi everywhere, and I'm told Wi-Fi can tell me how much. So some of the infrastructure's there already, right? So you can already start that journey and start to get that rich data and manipulate that and use it for the purpose that it's needed. But then if you need to go granular, then have that investment in them spaces.
I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there between you, in that I think when we first started talking about Smart Campus, it was very much a conversation with IT and people in networks, when actually you now look and you see it's estates driving those conversations, it's student experience driving those conversations, and the multiple stakeholders that you have when you start thinking about Smart Campus, they're starting to solidify these concepts and bring them to the kind of network and application providers to develop something to meet their needs.
Yeah, and it's all along, like I mentioned earlier, it's all around those benefits, right? Are they cashable benefits? Are they just benefits that are going to be a better user experience? If you can bubble those to the top first and then work backwards how you're going to get those and how you're going to deliver those through a Smart Campus. So an example that you're talking about there could be timetabling, where they're saying that we've got 200-seat lecture theatre and we don't know if that's been used to its capacity. Is it only being used for 20-seat lecturers for most of the time, where we can move those smaller groups into smaller areas, and where we're having to do 3 cohorts of lectures for a particular subject, bring them all in here into one. So it's those sort of user stories and the benefits that you can bring. If you can get those and bubble those to the top and share them with the wider organisation, it will make your case easier.
Yeah, and I think that's one, when you talk about the infrastructure, that's the interesting thing, because a lot of I was at a big London airport the other day that we all know, and they've spent probably 12 million euros on these brand new access points we've developed that have built-in GPS. So you can now do indoor GPS using your Wi-Fi. What's really funny is nobody in IT had told operations or energy management or real estate at that airport they bought this infrastructure. So we ran an event last week, and all people from the app that you've probably all used when you go to the airport, about 160 people came and went, I can't believe we've got this and we've had it for a year. Because IT weren't talking to real estate. And I said, no, and we've just launched it actually. So when you go there, you'll see a blue dot. I can switch on GPS across the whole 3 terminals now. And you don't need to put in sensors and stick stuff to the wall. But they didn't know, because it's exactly what you said. IT and real estate are just...
I think so many people had them stories. I was told something less than a week ago where a particular bit of software is, I'm pretty sure it's going end of life, and I put it on the roadmap a bit further down, and we're going to have to buy the module. And then I was actually told, but we've got that module, we've bought it, so you can just make that happen, right? So a lot of the time the investment's already been made, or you've already got it there, and it's just enabling things and switching them on. So
yeah, it's fascinating the way the infrastructure's changed as well. Because I've been doing it, I was at Cisco before, and I've been at Meraki and Aruba. But it's all of a sudden changed as well, because you were saying about experience-driven, how it's student experience that's driving the network. And it's actually this experience that's driving our roadmap. So when I explained to Mo, the sort of things we're launching next year are all being driven by experience. So it's how many people are in that room, and how warm was that room, and why. And then you need that room to talk back to the building management system and change the air quality, open the windows. But it's actually, those use cases are now driving us to what we build.
I think that's the next step, because if you look at, we went to visit a smart building and it was brilliant, absolutely great. You had a digital map and it would tell you where there were desk space available, or the air quality was there. So you could decide, well, that looks a bit crowded there, a bit warm, I'd come and sit over here. You can make them decisions yourself. But I think now what needs to happen next is that next part of, well, the air quality is not good. What happens then? Does it does the building open a window? Does it turn the HVAC on? And does it make it better? And then taking it a step further is, will AI be able to make them decisions for us?
That's the fascinating one. I was telling Mo, actually, I was in Switzerland this week with Michael Drayson, who's in the crowd. There he is. And one of this guy that works for CERN, he's founded a company based around smart campus and buildings, and he showed us, it was 5 minutes, he showed us an AI smart building solution, and he said exactly that. He said all of these building management systems, the sensors like I've got sitting here, the access point is all driven through APIs, and those APIs are open standards. So we believe in this open standard approach. And we're pushing all those APIs in, and then this large language model is sitting behind it and saying, just like you said, the air quality is too low, I'll open the window, but also there's a flood in bathroom 2, so we'll move this lecture to that lecture hall, and we'll send the location of that through to Indoor Atlas, which is a mapping platform, and navigate the students into the new room. But he said that's now as well. So I think we'll see that over the next year or two.
To have that, like I was saying, again, for me personally, if I look in the morning, I'd look at a few things on my phone. I'd look at the news, I'd look at what the travel situation is the tube running, and where's my first meeting, where do I need to be in the morning? And if you can bring all of that together into that experience, well, the tube station's close, so you're taking the overground today, you're not actually in that campus, you're over here, making them decisions for that end-to-end user experience will be amazing.
And I think you're right. You know, it's exciting to see those business requirements driving the development of network at the vendor level, but also at the integrator level. You know, we're working, developing our own platforms and solutions to address some of these problems. But I think what's really exciting is going from a point where a network replacement meant doing the same thing but faster, whereas now the network is driving business or the network is delivering against business requirements, which is, you know, an exciting place to be for all of us, I think.
It's a utility in the network now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to have it.
I think the network has become a plumbing, basically, of the whole building. You look at that airport use case, all the university use cases. I was talking to Mo earlier about measuring leaking toilets, which sounds funny, but it's we've got big hotel groups like Accor that are our customer, and they're losing like 80,000 euros a month on wasted water of just things just left running. But they can't measure that without a sensor. Now, if the European regulation says you can't put batteries in these sensors anymore and you can't use rare resources, which is cabling, how do you know if the water's leaking? So we're building these energy harvesting sensors working with Enocean, so they can measure that flow, tell the building, and as you quite rightly said earlier when we were sitting down, that can raise a ticket automatically, and then you've got a more efficient team of people going around fixing these problems as well. So the network is actually going to become this intelligent plumbing of the whole building.
And it gives them that priority of what's important, what needs to be looked at more quickly. Yeah.
So you mentioned, you know, moisture and kind of leak detection. What other metrics can you measure with these sensors, John?
Well, I can bore you for hours about that. Yeah.
I know you told me there was 7,000 different sensors.
There's 7,000
earlier,
different sensors, funny enough. Yeah. So there's some really interesting ones. I mean, vaping is a big one for me at the moment. Well, yeah, I vape as well, actually. I shouldn't have said that. Not for me personally. But vaping is a big one. So we're working with this Pressac vape detector, which is energy harvesting. CO2 in meeting rooms. I was telling these guys, I ran a meeting the other day with some customers, and I shut the door and didn't open the windows, and they all started yawning. And I pulled out a CO2 sensor that was glowing red, and I said, this is just the same as having 2 glasses of wine. That's the productivity impact. So there's 7,000. The most interesting one I'm working on now is in hospitals, you have to turn people when they've had an operation. There's not enough. There's 40,000 vacancies for nurses to turn people, which is a big problem. So I'm now working on this project in Germany. So this sensor automatically knows if this patient's been turned. It goes through the network and flags the nurse, and she goes and turns them, which saves having 10 nurses.
Wow.
So it's even things like that we're coming to. So it's exciting.
Yeah. I think we're probably nearing the end of our 20 minutes now, 2 minutes. Is there any questions?
There's one. There's one at the back.
Yeah, he's going.
He's getting a microphone.
Oh, he's getting a mic.
Hi, Jonathan Oakley from Loughborough University. You've mentioned things like, okay, so there's 7,000 sensors, but what are the top 3 big impacts? What are the top 3 that you should, if you're starting from nowhere, what are the 3 things that you should be looking at straight from the get-go?
Yeah, so that's, funny enough, we were in a meeting with a large university that said exactly that, because it's a bit like my wife parking. If there's too many spaces, she just stands there. So if it's 7,000 sensors, exactly that problem. So what we do is we sit down with you and we say, the 3 biggest impacts will be student air quality, I think, in rooms and halls. That's number 1. So CO2, vape detection, AIQ it's called. The second one is energy measurement. So there's these little clamp sensors that clamp straight over the mains power, and that can measure voltage every 30 seconds. So if you have a smart meter, it's every 30 minutes, so the data's not very good. If you have these clamp sensors that are energy harvesting, again, it does 30 seconds, so you can see peaks and troughs of energy consumption. And then the last thing I would say is looking at water flow wastage. So in those 3 use cases, just with those 3 sensor types, you can tackle the student air quality, like we were talking about, wastage water, and energy consumption, and then push that into a platform like PlanOn that we're talking to and others. And then you can see all that data and then make changes around it. But they're the 3 I would pick, personally. And space optimization, of course.
Yeah.
I'd say 4, because that's the biggest one we're talking about at the moment, is space optimization.
Lloyd Naylor, I'm from UCL. You mentioned, John, about the amount of data that comes out of these systems, and I think that there's a journey of getting all the right data available to us, but we're already in a position where I know that some of our systems get a yearly review. So some of our buildings get a yearly review of what that building is running like, based on data that comes out every minute or second. So we get 365 days worth of data and look at it once a year. Which I think is probably suboptimal. Yeah. I don't know what the path is, though, so that, unless it's CERN, where do we get to a path that says we get proper AI managing our buildings in a way that is real-time?
Yes, that is a challenge. Well, that's why we're working with, we've basically got this open standards approach where we're taking all the data from the access points, and I don't want to get really technical here, but we secure it through a WebSocket, AES encrypt it, and then we push it through the central network, the Aruba management platform. And then as a streaming API, we then have like a holding collector, which is called an IoT collector, and that keeps the metadata between the sensor and the network, so it can aggregate it instead of pumping it into your cloud. Otherwise, your Azure bill goes through the roof. And then what we've done then is take that into Azure IoT Hub and then run a Copilot reporting tool against it. And then it's dynamically making changes. So the first example you'll see of that is we're launching something called AI Dynamic Power Saving, where the whole network will shut down when it realizes there's no devices in it being used. And it will turn the access points from 14 watts to 2 watts, which saves around €400 per quarter in power. So that's just one example. But all that data flow, we call it this parsing. So we pass the data to an IoT collector, keep it there to reduce metadata. Then we pass it onto IoT in Azure, for example, with the transport profile. And then we manage that with something like Copilot to keep an eye on the data. But then it's dynamic, not annual. Yeah. That was too technical, sorry.
Thank you very much, gents.
Thank you.
I don't know what you're doing with your chairs. You taking them with you, or?
We can take them with us if you like.
Thanks for listening.